You'll help me complete this phrase. Everything rises and falls on... What if it's true? Keith, what if everything does rise and fall on leadership? If it is true, wouldn't it make sense, Dylan, that we had a simple way, what kind of way? Simple. To lead. Mike said it. It starts with us, leader of one. That's us. That's where it starts. Wouldn't it make sense for us to have a simple way to lead and teach our people to lead? Everybody say yes. Yes. Here's what I'm going to do for you today. I'm going to simplify leadership for you today. Just 4 things. How many things? 4. In fact, we're going to do some math now. It's a good thing Mike's leaving. But we're going to do some math now. What I'm going to share with you is simple, but it is leadership math. So here's what I want you to do real quick. I want you to look at the person beside you, and I want you to ask them, are you good in math? Go ahead, ask them, are you good in math? All right, hold on now. Come back to me. Now, the question, Clinton, was, are you good in math? How many of you would say you're sitting by a person right now that's in some real deep weeds? So, are you good at math? I'm going to keep this very simple. If you're ready, say I'm ready. I'm going to simplify leadership for you because it is very simple. Add value to people every day. If you want to be an influencer, who wants to be an influencer? If you want to be an influencer and gain influence with people, it's simple. Robbie, people ask me all the time, Chris, how do you become a leader? And I say the same thing every day, every time. Add value to people every day. See, if you'll intentionally add value to people every day, you'll increase your influence with them. Just think about it. Anyone who has a positive impact, influence on your life, it's because they add value to you. Who would agree with that? And because they add value to you, there's a respect. There's an appreciation. You want to be around those people. Rod, you want to hear what those people have to say. When I'm around Rod Larson, there's a reason I sit there. Y'all notice I sit by Rod Larson? There's a reason, Jonathan, I'm sitting by Rod Larson. It's because he adds value to me. There's a reason I was sitting beside Mike Sims. Because Mike Sims adds value to me. There was a reason I was talking to Tommy Sacca before this event began. That's because Tommy adds value to me while I was meeting with Robbie Davis and Greg Bibb in the room before I came down, because they add value to me. See, every day, my goal, and shouldn't it be all of our goal? Everybody say yes? Yes. I don't know what the goal is yet, but the goal is to add value to people. Every day, that's my goal, and I do it in different ways. I use quotes and illustrations and stories, and Darren, I share my own experiences. And I use platforms like social media, and I call people on the phone, and I meet with people in person. And one of the people that I love adding value to, Jason, is a guy named, I'm talking to Jason Kellner, is a guy named Jason West. I've never heard of a guy named Jason West. Well, I love Jason West, and here's why I love Jason West, because he's a student of life, he's a student of this business, and he takes that value, he takes that what? He takes that value and he applies it to his life, he applies it to his business, and then he pours it into his people. You all might write this down. Jason is a river, not a reservoir, so maybe you should decide today, I'm going to start being a river, not a reservoir. And so what I want to do quickly is I just want to bring him up. I think we have a mic, Luke. I want to bring Jason West up, and I want him to just share for a moment. This is a guy who's a diamond in our company. He's quickly approaching double diamond. He's adding value every single day to people. Let's give him a nice warm welcome. Jason, appreciate you, and congrats on all of your success. Share with everyone. And I know it was great. We invested some time together last week. We rode bikes, but we talked a lot about business and life. And I know you devoured a book in like 48 hours. Just share with everyone your thoughts on the power of adding value to people.
Well, I appreciate that, Chris, and thank you for just having me up here to quickly share. Ashley, he gave me more than 10 minutes, so I got 12 hours. And so, as a soon-to-be former math teacher, I had trouble sleeping last night just putting this together. But I tell my advanced students every year as we start the year, I said, we're going to do 4 things this year. And they look at me like I'm crazy because they're 12 and 13-year-olds. And I said, we're going to add, subtract, multiply, and divide. That's all we're going to do. And I said, the 3 toughest things we're going to do is subtraction. Then they look at me like I'm crazy. We're going to do some problem solving and slope. Slope means mountain. And if you think about the 3 toughest things in ZJ, subtraction, problem solving, and climbing the mountain are tough as well. And so, Chris, I thought about adding value. One of the things I do when I teach one of the toughest subjects, Mike probably remembers this, positive and negative numbers are tough. And so I draw an illustration, and I draw a hole on the board. And I'm not real good at art, so they usually laugh. But I teach them to fill the hole. And when you think about adding value to people, you're really filling the hole. And how do you fill the hole? You fill the hole by your experiences, your skills, your thoughts, and your knowledge as you improve yourself. And you see, each of you have a unique strength that he doesn't possess. That's why he surrounds himself, because he knows each of you have a unique skill. And so you want to add value to people, fill the hole for people. Point out their unique strengths. And that's how you want to add value to people. And when you do that, as he said, it increases your influence. It multiplies. And if you understand multiplication, multiplication is just repeated addition. And it keeps happening over and over again without you being there. And so I could quickly share stories, but as you surround yourself with people like Chris, and then you think about how to add value, watch them. See, you can add value to your team members because you're around them a lot. But when you spend time with Chris, I say, how am I going to add value to him? And so I watched him, and so I was able to hopefully add some value to him. Not through what I said, but through what I noticed. And I did it again for someone else this month as I interviewed them, and I said, I found this book, Lead for God's Sake. And some of you have it. I encourage you to read it and apply it, because it is the matter of the heart, and you'll add value. So Chris, that's what I think about add value.
Thanks, Jason. Good day, sir. I want you to ask yourself a few questions here, starting every day, starting today. Every morning, I want you to ask yourself this question. It's a simple question. Who can I add value to today? Wouldn't that be right? A great question to start your morning. One of the questions to start your morning. Who can I add value to today? Because if everything rises and falls on leadership, and leadership is influence, and if you disagree with that, you take it up with John Maxwell, who has the largest leadership team in the world, who says leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. And if I know if I add value to people, I will increase my influence. Doesn't it make sense for all of us to have a focus on who can I add value to today? Everybody say yes? Yes. So number one, who can I add value to today? And in the evening, Tommy, I should be asking myself, I would encourage you, this is what I do, you can do it if you choose to. What I encourage you to do is ask yourself, who? Who did I add value to today? And how? How did I add value to them? I'd write this down as we sum up adding value. If you'll intentionally add value to people every day, you'll increase your influence, and you will begin to expand your leadership pool. I'm going to repeat that one more time because I'd write it down if I were you. If you'll intentionally add value to people every day, you'll increase your influence, and you'll begin to expand your leadership pool. Does that make sense for everybody? All right, let's move on. Tyler, we're going to go to subtract. Everybody ready for subtract? Say yes? Yes. Subtract your leadership landmines. And you might say, Chris, what do you mean by leadership landmines? Here's what I mean by leadership landmines. All of us have within us, Luke, parts of our leadership that will destroy us and keep us from moving forward. And sometimes we step, Brittany, on these leadership landmines and we blow ourselves up. In fact, I was telling Mike earlier, I tell some people, don't worry about the competition. If you'll hang around long enough, you'll blow yourself up. I have leadership landmines, right? One of my leadership landmines, I'll share with you a couple of mine as you think about a couple of your own. One of my leadership landmines was trying to make everybody happy. For the first 18 months of my business, I was Rep Services Kentucky. If you had a problem, you just called me and I'll spend all day trying to fix it and make you happy. And it almost killed me and my business. And so if that's a leadership landmine for any of you today, trying to make all of your people happy, trying to make everybody happy, my advice is don't let people wear you out. Tim, never give anyone the last of you. You can't breathe life into other people if you can't breathe. You can't inspire. if you break down the word inspire, inspire is Latin, which means to breathe, breathing in life to others. You can't breathe life into others if you can't breathe. And so you have to be constantly thinking about that. In order to grow, you got to let people go. You got to do that. How many of you ever tried to make all of your people happy? It doesn't work, does it? It doesn't work. You know, I was at an event just a couple of weeks ago in California, and after the event, Chris, we were doing some team pictures and so forth, and there was a guy, he leaned over and he said, Chris, he said, I just want you to know I disagree with one of your leadership principles. And I smiled and said, that's okay. And we kept taking pictures, but it wasn't okay with him. That was okay with me. And so he said, Chris, no, you didn't hear me. I disagree with one of your leadership principles. And I said, I smiled again, and Stephanie, I said, that's fine. And then he got in front of the picture and said, Chris, you don't understand. I disagree with one of your leadership principles. And I stepped back, I said, okay, I got it. You disagree with one of my leadership principles. I got it. I didn't share the principle. I didn't share the leadership principle to make you happy. I shared the leadership principle to help you. I'm a leader, not a clown. And the point there is we can't make everybody happy. You know, another leadership landmine of mine was I had to subtract some things. A leadership landmine I had to subtract from my business, had to subtract from my life. Back in 2009 was putting myself first. That was a leadership landmine of me, and you guys have to look at yourself in the mirror as you look at what some of your landmines are. And I looked at or heard of a quote by Zig Ziglar. Some of you have heard of that quote. If you help enough people get what they want, you get everything you want. And all of a sudden, Luke, it hit me. I was putting myself first. I was putting me, Mike, in front of the people. And so at that point, I started focusing on putting people first. I started focusing on serving people, knowing they'll come back and serve me. I started focusing, Dylan, on adding value to people, knowing they'd come back and add value to me. I started focusing on being a blessing versus getting a blessing. So let's do this. Let's take a time out real quick. Let's take 10 seconds. How many seconds? 10. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to think of what's one of your leadership landmines? Think about, write down on your notes, in your notes, write down what's one of your leadership landmines. What's a leadership landmine you need to subtract from your business? And I know it's going to be hard because you're so doggone good. But and I tell you, in fact, Robbie, let's do this. Let's make it easier. Everybody look to the person to your left and write down one of their leadership landmines. And write it real big and bold so they can see it. All right, so here we go. Back with me. Everybody back with me here. Come on now. Add value to people every day. Subtract your leadership landmines. Tyler, help me out. Multiply. Multiply your strengths by developing them. John, multiply your strengths by developing them. Folks, it's in the things that you do well, your strengths, that you excel. It's in the things that you do well, Tamara, your strengths, that give you the high return. And Jason said, I want you all to think about what's my leadership gift? What is it? This is what you guys thinking about right now. What is it that I do well? As Jason West mentioned a minute ago, all of us have something unique about us. We have something that we can do better than anybody else. Just think about it for a moment. You have a strength that you can do far better than the person sitting beside you. Kind of makes you feel superior, doesn't it? Doesn't do this. Just look at the person beside you and say, you need me. Now look back, listen, look back at the person who just said you need me and say, not that much. It was last year, I was invited to play in an alumni golf event at the college I attended. Everybody, raise your hand if you've ever seen me play golf. Everybody look around. Nobody. That's a clue. That's because I don't play. I'm not very good, and I didn't play very well that day. But I was paired up with a guy who played golf at the college who was a golf pro. And it was in that day that I realized confidence does not replace skill. But Jan, not one time when we were on the fairway, Rod, I know you're a golfer, not one time when we were on the fairway did this golf pro say, Chris, would you help me with my swing a little bit? Not one time when we were on the putting green, he said, Chris, would you help me line up that putt for me? You see, no one asks advice in your areas of weakness. You have no influence in your areas of weakness. You have influence in your areas of strength. And remember, leadership, Andrea, is influence. So multiply your strengths by developing them. We have add value to people every day. Subtract your leadership landmines. Then we have multiply your strengths by developing them. Divide your weaknesses by delegating them. You have to look at the things you don't do well right and go, why am I doing those? I don't need to be doing those. Why am I doing those? See, if you've ever read or if you've ever heard of the book 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, you ever heard of that book by a mentor, a friend of mine, John Maxwell? And in that book, here's one of the things you'll find written very quickly, is you don't do all 21 laws well. In fact, if you think you do, you don't need a leadership book, you need therapy. So what do we do with the things we don't do well? We divide them. We what? We divide them. We fill our inner circle with people whose strengths complement our weaknesses. I'm going to repeat that again because that's pretty good. Patty, you fill your inner circle. Who 10 is your inner circle? You fill your inner circle with people whose strengths complement your weaknesses. See, a leader is a lot like a quarterback. See, a quarterback doesn't get paid to run the ball. A quarterback gets paid to put the ball down in the right hands. And so what we all have to do as we leave here today is we have to take our weaknesses and we have to pass. We have to take our weaknesses and what? Pass. We have to pass them on to others. We have to take our weaknesses and we pass them on to others. And trust me, we all have weaknesses. A few weeks ago, I was working on a training on the weaknesses of a leader. And I reached out to my inner circle, and one of the guys I reached out to was someone I have a lot of respect for. He's a friend of mine, but I love the fact that he shoots me straight. And so I reached out to Tommy Sack and I said, Tommy, I'm working on a training on weaknesses of a leader, and I want everybody to know I have weaknesses. I want everyone to know what those weaknesses are. And I was thinking maybe over the next few days, maybe by next Tuesday, I could just maybe give you a call, and you'll have had some time to think about some of my weaknesses, and maybe by then you'll be able to share with me what those weaknesses are. And he said, "Oh, Chris, I can do that now." Now? He said, "Oh yes, I've got them off the top of my head. You got a pen and paper?" Everyone has weaknesses. A couple of weeks ago, I was at a training with a group of people, and I told a bunch of leaders, go back and tell your people about your weaknesses. And I could tell it was making them uncomfortable. And one of them come to me after the event. They admitted that they were really nervous about telling their people about their weaknesses. And I said, my friends, you're operating under a false assumption. You're assuming your people don't know your weaknesses. They know them, and they're talking about them on Facebook. The reason I want you to share with them is so that they know that you have them. That way they don't worry about you quite as much. So add value to people every day. Subtract your leadership landmines. Multiply your strengths by developing them. And divide your weaknesses by delegating them. In closing, they tend to ask me, Robbie, are leaders born? Are leaders born? And I always give the same answer. Of course they are. Think about that question. Are leaders born? I've never met an unborn leader. So my challenge for all of you today is to be the leader. Be the leader that simplifies leadership for you and your team. Simply lead. You know, one of our problems in our nation, one of the problems in Zija Nation, one of our problems in this room, is we tend to look for the leader to solve our problems. Stop trying to find a leader to solve your problems and start being the leader to solve your problems. Start being the leader that casts the vision for your people. Start being the leader that leads from the front. Start being the leader. Because it's my belief that our best days are just ahead of us. So get your hopes up. Thank you all so much.